All right, I think we're back on the record now. I want to apologize for the abrupt ending just before the lunch break. The Zoom system down at the University of Maine at Augusta here went down, so we took our lunch break a little early and a little precipitously. Sergeant, I have one question, I think, for you and one public service announcement. It's Da Vinci's, not DeMillo's in Lewiston.
My wife let me know.
And you at one point said that you had seen Mr. Card's guns someplace. He was showing them to people. Where did that occur?
That was at the Armory parking lot. He had them in his vehicle. They were just loose too. They weren't in like a locked bag or anything.
In the Armory parking lot in Saco?
Yes, ma'am.
And on how many occasions was that?
Like 2 or 3, and then he brought in the thermal optic. He actually brought that into the classroom.
Is the policy of the Army Reserve to allow reservists to arrive at a drill with their own weapons?
Negative. No.
So it was unusual to have someone show up with weapons?
We have a lot of police officers that I figured they're probably coming off duty. They might have a weapon, but unless you're law enforcement, I've never brought a gun to Saco personally.
And over what period of time? You said that Mr. Card did it 2 or 3 times. When did that happen?
The first time was years and years ago. It was, yeah, I'm just gonna say probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. He showed me the rifle, the long gun. He showed me a few pistols too, and I believe the last one was that 45. Yeah, and
Also at Saco?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
What's the policy if they do bring guns? Is it a place to store that in the armory, or you just say secure in the car?
He just kept it in his car. You're not supposed to do that. I think there's actually signage that says you're not supposed to bring firearms onto the post, but they don't really look in our cars or anything.
So one follow-up. At any point after you left New York, did you ever understand that the Army had prohibited him from having access to weapons?
That was the other thing that for the Four Winds, for him to get out of Four Winds, there was like a few, like he had to follow a few rules. Because like I said, my wife was very, aware of all this, but they said that his family took all of his guns out of his trailer, like his dad and his brother, or his dad and his son. He had to take the medication that they prescribed him there. And the third was Hodgson was gonna move in with him just to, be there for him. And out of those 3 things, I don't think any of them actually happened.
So what was your source of information that these were the things that were supposed to happen?
Hodgson.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dan Wathen, Chair of the committee, and I just would say I'm sorry that I wasn't here this morning. I had another meeting that I had to attend, and these are videoed, so I will promise that I will watch it on video. And I will now call the next person, Edward Yurek. You could remain standing when you get into the spot. State your name.
Edward Yurek.
You swear the testimony you'll give in the matter now in the hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
May be seated. You're his counsel, are you?
Yes, I am, Judge. John Chapman. I think we know each other.
Yes,
years ago.
been a while, John. I didn't, yeah, your hair used to be a little darker.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right, be seated.
I understand that that Lieutenant and also Master Sergeant Yurek has provided documents already that were requested by Bernardino. There's some others that he doesn't have personal control over, but I understand from the Judge Advocate General Court that the Army is supposed to be providing you with others. I guess they're being redacted or something. Identifying it.
Okay, and Mr. Rushlow will begin with the questioning.
Good afternoon, and just to follow up on that last comment. Sometimes with previous reserve witnesses where we've gotten documents like text messages or something like that just before the hearing. When we do have an opportunity to review it, sometimes we have to have the witness come back again. We certainly hope not to have to do that, but that's certainly a possibility when we only get documents really at the time of the testimony.
Understood.
So, Mr. Yurek, your counsel has already said that you have two roles, but I'm going to start off with your military role. You're a member of the Army Reserve,
I am.
and could you describe your entire Army career and how much of it has been reserve, how much active duty, and summarize it? You don't need to go into detail.
I've been in the Army for 36 years. I spent the first 12 on active duty as an infantryman. I arrived at the 3304th in about 2000, 2001, and I've been there ever since. I've held all positions at the 3304th, instructor, senior instructor, first sergeant, and I am currently the operations sergeant for the battalion.
And as operations sergeant, do you have a rank?
I am a master sergeant, 88.
And is that to be operations sergeant, do you have to be a master sergeant?
Not necessarily, no.
What's the number after the E hyphen? For master-
E8, 8,
E8?
yes,
And so is the only non-commissioned officer more senior to you in the battalion, the battalion sergeant major?
that's correct.
And that's Sergeant Major Plumick?
That's correct. At the time of all this, Master Sergeant Connor had the actual title of operations NCO, so I was underneath him at the time. To be specific, I would answer to Master Sergeant Connor first and then to the Sergeant Major.
And before becoming operations sergeant, were you the first sergeant of Bravo Company?
Many years ago, between 8 to 10 years ago, yes.
And perhaps because of that prior status, were you familiar with Robert Card?
I believe I was his first sergeant when he arrived at the 304th. I'm not sure of that, though.
Were you also familiar from a different context with his brother Ryan?
I didn't know Ryan until July of this year when I spoke to him on the phone.
Pardon me?
I did not know, or I still never seen Ryan Card. I became aware of him in July from the incident at West Point.
All right. So did you become aware of the Card family having gone to the Saginaw Sheriff's Department with concerns about Robert Card's mental status back in May?
No,
When did you ever become aware of that?
it wasn't until after West Point. I believe Sergeant Schofield mentioned something to me in September, October-ish, but I had no idea of any part of Sergeant Card or any problems that he was having, but I wouldn't be in position to either. Because I was the operations sergeant. I wasn't in his command chain.
So the operations sergeant works in the battalion headquarters,
That is correct.
and Bravo Company has its own chain of command.
That's correct.
And the top, first sergeant Kelvin Moat would have been the senior non-com and therefore the person responsible for anything happening there.
Anything happening with Bravo Company,
Yes.
because he's the company first sergeant. That's correct.
So turning your attention now to July. You have been here all morning and you heard Sergeant Reed describe various events that happened
Yes.
that weekend. I'm not going to ask you to go through all that in detail, but did he give a detailed, but from your knowledge, reasonably accurate description of what happened with Sergeant Card?
Not as I received it.
Pardon me?
When I was told by Sergeant Wainwright that Sergeant Card was acting strange in a push kind of thing happened between the two of them, that's all that was explained to me. I did not speak to Sergeant Reed that day at all. I spoke to Sergeant Wainwright.
You spoke to Captain Reamer?
Sergeant Wainwright,
Oh, Wainwright.
Christopher
Sorry.
Wainwright.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you, and that's probably more my bad hearing than your articulation, but
Okay.
if you would mind, wouldn't mind, please speak up. So from your conversation with Sergeant Wainwright, did you understand there were some concerns about Sergeant Card's behavior?
Yes, I did. He said that Sergeant Card was not acting correctly and that Sergeant Card and Sergeant Reed had kind of an altercation. So I asked Sergeant Wainwright, I said, have we been drinking at all? Meaning, were they drinking? And he said, yes. And I said, well, tell them to stop drinking, to stay away from each other. That's kind of where I thought it was all landing. Sergeant Wainwright pushed back and said, something's really up. And I said, okay. And then I went down and spoke to Sergeant Card.
And was First Sergeant Moat
No.
in a
It's
different
just-
location? And
Yes, he was. Sergeant, First Sergeant Moat was at Camp Natural Bridge. It was about an hour away, only because the bridges were washed out.
so you were the closest senior non-commissioned officer who
That's
could get
correct.
involved in this.
That is correct. At that time, yes.
And so you went to the residence where they'd all been staying, and you had some contact with Sergeant Card?
I did. I found him standing outside his room. He was crying. And I said, Sergeant Card, what's going on? He said, everyone keeps talking about me. And I said, what does that mean? He said, I just want him to stop talking about me. I asked him what his plan was for the rest of the night. He said, I'm staying in my room. He used some expletives. And I said, it's probably a good idea. When I was talking to him, I got a smell of alcohol coming from him. So I didn't think the way he was acting, which is very unusual, even for a long time I'd seen Sergeant Card. It didn't make any sense to me, but I figured it was the alcohol playing into it. So I said, all right, why don't you just go sleep it off and we'll see you tomorrow. He went in and he closed his door.
So did you have to sort of force your way into the room in order to have
No, I
contact?
met him outside his room. He was totally cooperative at the time.
Pardon me?
I met him outside of his room. He was totally cooperative with me at the time. He was, when I ran into him, he was going into his room and I said, Sergeant Card, and he just turned and he talked to me. It was mostly in the hallway, right at his door.
So was that your conclusion about what to do that night, just to let him
No, Not
sleep?
at all, not at all. From there, I went and Sergeant Wainwright said, something's really going on. And I said, okay, so then I called First Sergeant Moat. And then I said, First Sergeant, something's going on. And something that I didn't actually ask him to come. I said, but there's something's going on I don't understand, but I think Card's been drinking. So I've told him to stay in his room, and First Sergeant Moat said, all right, I'm coming. And he's the first sergeant. He has to deal with these sergeants on his terms. So I said, okay, I'll be here.
And did you have any further involvement that evening?
I did. First Sergeant Moat and I went and knocked on his door and so on. I believe, I'm not sure if the others were anywhere near us. I don't remember that. And he kind of opened the door. He was crying again. I just want to be left alone again. And we're like, all right, so you're going to stay here for the night? Yes, we are. I did put my foot in the doors because we had knocked for some time. I just didn't want him slamming it in our faces, but he slammed it anyway. And so the door was closed. First Sergeant Moat and I walked away for a bit and I said, you know, he's still got those rental car keys. We don't need a drunk NCO moving around the post. Let's go back and get those guns. I'm sorry, the car keys. First Sergeant Moat says, I also want to do a health and welfare to make sure he doesn't have any guns. I thought that was unusual. The Sergeant Card I knew was a reserved, quiet, introvert person, rule abiding person. And I thought it was unusual, but I didn't think anything of it. I said, all right, we're gonna go do it. We knocked and knocked again. He didn't open. So then we called the security guys. I said, we need a key because we need to do welfare. They handed me their pass key. We went into the room. Sergeant Card was there with the sheet over his head. Sergeant Card, I need to look at you. He very reluctantly let me look at it. I said, where are your rental car keys? He tossed them to me. We searched his room. We didn't find anything unusual. We found the beer, which kind of validated my point that he'd been drinking. And I said, all right, Sergeant Card, you understand that you're not to leave this building tonight? Yes. Well, he nodded. I said, all right. Then as far as I was concerned, we were dealing with a drunk NCO. And I said, we're going to leave now. And just, in my opinion, I thought in the morning, everything would have been fine.
Did you notice that there were only 2 beers missing from the?
I did
container?
notice that, yes.
Pardon?
I did notice First Sergeant Moat pointed them out. He said, look at that. And I saw 2 beers missing.
And that was the only evidence you had that he'd been drinking,
That's correct.
other than that there were some indications that he'd been drinking, smell of alcohol perhaps.
If it had been, I'm also a police officer, if it had been roadside, I would have certainly done field sobriety with him. It was clear to me that he'd been drinking.
So what happened the next morning?
The next morning, we have these numbers that you call in case something happens to a soldier, the next person in their family. And it was his father's number. I called his father because I wanted to know what we were dealing with. And I left a message on Yurek, this is my number, something's going on with your son, Robert, and I'd like to talk to you. About 40 minutes later, Ryan Card called me. And he said, I explained what I was seeing, what is going on with him. Ryan Card explained it to me this way, that he has hearing implants and he has superhuman type hearing now. I don't know if any of you have actually been on a range. There's hearing protection, which are electric. So you can be standing there while everyone's shooting and you don't have to yell. You just talk normally. And those voices you can hear. If you're not on a range, you put on that hearing protection, you can hear birds chirping from like a half mile away. It's kind of weird. Ryan Card explained to me that he had those implants in his head because the Army was looking to discharge him because he wasn't passing his hearing tests. So Robert Card had these hearing implants put in. And that now that he has this hearing ability, he doesn't know how to process what he's being told. He explained it to me that if he was standing at Lowe's at aisle 1, and at aisle 15, somebody would say, I don't like that color. It would hit Robert Card as if he was hearing it for himself. He was personalizing all of it and didn't know how to process it. When I got through talking with Ryan Card, in my head, the hearing implants were really messing up with Robert Card's thought process. And that's why I thought we were going.
So that Ryan Card claimed to be the source of the information that he had implants as opposed to simply having hearing aids.
I believe he used the word implants. I saw it as more than just an electrical thing, and that might have been because I did not notice Sergeant Card wearing implants the day before. I never knew that Sergeant Card was hard of hearing until that day in July.
Sorry,
Never
you
knew.
didn't notice him wearing hearing aids?
I never did. I never noticed him wearing them.
So was that the first time you'd spoken to Ryan Card that you know of?
Yes,
And I didn't ask this earlier and I apologize, but not only are you a member of the Army Reserve, you're also a full-time law enforcement officer.
that's correct, with Brunswick Police.
How long have you been with Brunswick?
About 23 years.
And what's your rank?
I am a lieutenant.
And are you on the patrol side or?
Yes, I work patrol, typically the nighttime supervisor.
Typically what?
Typically the nighttime supervisor.
All right, because I think that leads to the next topic area, but so after speaking to Ryan, and by the way, did he tell you anything about how the family had tried to get involved in helping Robert in May, several months before that?
I don't remember him saying anything about that. I pretty much kept Ryan on task to ask what was going on with him. I don't remember him mentioning Saginaw at all. I had no real knowledge that Saginaw was in any part of any of this. The only part of time I've learned about this is from the other testimony.
I see. So after speaking to Ryan Card, what did you do?
By that time, First Sergeant Mote arrived and he said, look, we got to go talk to him again. We knocked on his door a bunch of times. He wouldn't answer. First Sergeant Mote said that we're getting to the point where this is going to be command directed, but we're going to need some help. So we initially tried to find like the MPs of the post, but there aren't any MPs on the post. It's also a National Guard post owned by the state, not necessarily big Army. So we called the state police and the state police arrived. There was a sergeant and then I think I thought it was a field training officer and a new trooper. I'm not sure. That was my guess from what I saw.
So have you had the chance to look at the body cam video that the troopers did that night?
I didn't watch any part of that.
Pardon me?
I did not watch any part of that.
Well, I'm pretty sure you were depicted in various portions of the body cam video, but it might have been helpful to look at that if you had a chance to help refresh your memory if you needed refreshment. But so once the New York State Police arrived, what happened?
My thought process was these are the ones that knew him best. Sergeant Reed, Sergeant Noyd, Sergeant Wainwright, let them talk to him. I kind of stood back and let everyone do the talking. The troopers, I could tell, were not going to do what we were looking for them to do, to take him into protective custody. From what they heard, from what the feeling I got for them, they weren't going to go do that. So First Sergeant Moat and I said, okay, we're gonna command direct him to go. Our problem was that we didn't have an officer. And I knew that was gonna be a thing for Sergeant Card. I'm not sure how I got it done. I believe I reached out to, there was a civilian standing at the front desk. I asked her to call to a unit which was next door doing a big medical event there. And I said, call over there if there was any officers that could come over here to meet with me. The plan was that we tell Sergeant Carr that you're going to be command directed to go for mental health evaluation. If he had said, no, well, none of you are officers, then I was going to point to the two officers I borrowed from another unit and said, gentlemen, you're up. And their job would have been, Sergeant Carr, you are hereby ordered to go get the mental health evaluation. And the last thing we had spoken about as we were walking to the room, the troopers are ahead of us, I said, we're gonna have to put our hands on Sergeant Carr to get him to go to that mental health evaluation. Because if he says, no, he's not going, we're gonna have to actually physically pick him up and carry him there. And I'm grateful for the sergeants that were standing around us. Because when I said that, there was like a half second. Okay, we haven't been on this ground before, but okay. And we had decided that if the troopers went in, they said, look, can you go? And he said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Then they were gonna back out. Then we were gonna go in, try the officer thing. If that didn't work, and then we were actually gonna pick up Sergeant Card and carry him to the hospital.
Did it get to that point?
It did not. I believe Sergeant Card realized things, especially there's three of them, three troopers. They're concerned about you all, this, everything that they said. I didn't go in the room. I was further back. When the troopers went in, we all stood at position. So if Sergeant Card had started running, we could tackle him so he wouldn't be just cut loose on the world. So like I was standing back at a corner of a hallway. If he had come to me, I would have tackled him from there. So I did not hear what the troopers said to him. I don't know what he said. I don't know what the conversation was.
Eventually, though, Sergeant Card did, perhaps unwillingly, but he did physically accompany the rest of you out of the building and to a waiting vehicle.
That's correct. We had positioned that vehicle. So if we took it to its worst point of us carrying him. He was near the door. So we only had to get him to the vehicle. We could just put him in the car and start driving.
And did you accompany the rest of them to Keller Hospital?
I did not.
What did you do?
I let Sergeant Major, I believe I called the texted Sergeant Major that he's on his way, but that was the end of it. First Sergeant Moat was advising the command of everything that he was doing. I was just a second voice and echo of what First Sergeant Moat was saying. So my texts were very limited because First Sergeant Moat was updating everyone of what was happening.
So your understanding was that First Sergeant Moat was communicating with the command, meaning Sergeant Major Tlumac and the battalion commander?
I believe he was talking to Captain Reamer at the time. That's the one I'm sure he was talking to. I don't know who else was on that chain.
All right, but you communicated with Sergeant Major Tlumac to make sure he was understanding what was going on.
I did, and I believe I also I might have contacted Master Sergeant Connor because he's my boss, just saying, hey, this is where we're headed, because Sergeant Card's status changes when he goes into an Army hospital. The Army hospital is going to be yelling back to the unit like, what's going on? There's got to be an accountability issue going on there. My job was to turn in our status every day of who's on the ranges, where ranges they're at, and so on. And they would have seen a Sergeant Card at a hospital line in the accountability. I wanted to know what was going on.
So did you understand, though, that he had been evaluated at Keller and they were transferring him to Four Winds?
All right, Captain Raymond told me after, I'd say we were 2 days, hot means the range is live, we're shooting live ordnance. I'd say the second day, Captain Raymond said, I went to go meet with him every day because he's working the range. He said, yeah, they brought him to the Four Winds. And I remember saying to Captain, I'm glad we got him to where he needed to go, because it's clear that it wasn't just a hunch and that Sergeant Card had legitimate issues, that it was getting addressed. We're all high-fiving each other because it was the perfect scenario. We got him to where he needed to be. They identified it. Yeah, you're right. And they brought him to a place where he's supposed to be treated. We were very happy with the way it turned out as far as the unit was concerned.
When did you first learn that he'd been discharged from the hospital?
When I got back from AT, I'm not sure the date, beginning August 3rd maybe, but that's a guess. Ryan Card called me and said, where's my brother? And I said, I'm surprised he didn't tell you. And I gave him a rundown of what happened. So he's all good then? I said, yes, he should be fine. They're gonna take care of your brother. He should be all set. And if not that day, then certainly the next day, Ryan Card called me saying, what happened? And I said, I was curious, what are you talking about? And he said, well, he's out. And I said, no, he can't be out. During the time of AT, we were getting messages that there was supposed to be a hearing on the time where they would be looking to release him, of all the people that knew what was up with him, and that we would have to go talk. And I was meeting with Captain Raymer because we were prioritizing who would know best of how to describe what was happening to Sergeant Card. So if they said, look, we only have space for 3, then we were going to pick these top 3. They say 10, then there's going to be these 10 guys. We were working in our schedule for the ranges, how we're going to move people around to run the ranges safely and get our folks to wherever this hearing was to talk about Sergeant Card. We thought that he was going to be there for a very long time. And when Ryan Card called me and said he was out, I said, that can't be true. And he said, actually, how naive I was. I said, well, then he's all better. And he said, no, he's still the same. And I said, I don't believe that the hospital released him the same way they got him. I just don't believe that. And he said, he is the same. We were arguing. And I said, all right, what you need to do now is you need to get a welfare check done by SAG sheriffs right now. Call them right now and get that welfare check done so that they can meet with him and they'll put their eyeballs on.
Sorry, so you're talking now about early August?
It was early August, around the 3rd, 4th timeframe.
And so at that point, you already were suggesting that Sagadaw SO do a welfare check?
See, I didn't believe Ryan Card very much because in my head, it was a friction point that the hospital would release him the same way they got him. I thought Ryan Card was seeing things that he was either exaggerating or he didn't know. So my thought process was get SAG sheriffs in there. That's their ground, and have them do the welfare check. If there's something up, they'll see it and they'll be able to react to it.
All right, so you need to take a moment while we do a switch.
Keep leaving enough time for you to.
Sorry.
Leave a little time of answers so we can start.
Okay.
So as a longtime Brunswick police officer, are you familiar with the blue paper procedure?
Yes,
And that is the legal process for taking an individual into protective custody so that they can be examined at a hospital.
yes,
And the end result of that may be a court commitment of the person to a mental health facility. Is
correct.
that right?
That's correct. Yes,
That's how it works in Maine.
yes.
And did you believe that that was what was happening in New York State? Something similar to that?
Something similar to that. We did not, first, Sergeant Moten and I spoke, we knew what laws in Maine, but we didn't know what the laws in New York. We wanted, in a perfect world, what we were looking for was the troopers to PC him, Sergeant Card, and then we would deal with the outcome of that.
PC meaning protective
Protective
custody.
custody. That's correct. And I
So-
could tell right away as they were talking of what they were seeing, those troopers were not going to do a PC. They were going to ask, but they weren't going to take him into custody.
So after you learned that he had been discharged and was back in Maine, did you follow up yourself with Sagadaw SO to get a welfare check done?
When I spoke to Ryan, I said, you need to call him and call SAG, tell him everything that you're seeing. And if they need something else to call me, and I would be happy to elaborate on what happened in July. I had no eyes on Sergeant Card in August, and everything I was hearing was coming through Ryan. And I didn't want to call them and say, hey, this is what he's seeing, because they would have just said, all right, he needs to talk to us. I did not call SAG.
So moving forward now to mid-September. On September 15th, a Friday, did you find out at some point that day that Sergeant Hodgson had reported being assaulted by Sergeant Card and that Sergeant Card also made threatening statements?
I had no idea any of that happened.
You didn't get notified about any of that?
I saw the file come out. And
Try again.
I saw the file 6 come out. I thought that was from Ryan Card talking to SAG SO. When it said shoot up the National Guard Center, I think is the wording, I thought that was from Ryan Card. I did not know the Hodgson. I did not know any of the stories, that I didn't know any of the history with Sergeant Card that was happening. My visibility as Sergeant Card was what happened in July, what Ryan Card told me in August, and then me seeing the file pop out at Brunswick PD.
And that was because it was sent to all police agencies,
That's
so.
Right,
So you saw it at Brunswick PD.
that's correct.
And at that point, had you spoken to First Sergeant Moat at all that day?
I texted Master Sergeant Connor, the Sergeant Major, and I think Captain Raymond, but I'm not sure. And I said, did you see this file that came out? And I believe it was Captain Raymond, just, it was brief, yeah, we saw it, or yes, I know it's out there, that sort of thing. Again, I'm not in Sergeant Card's command line, so I'm a voice from outside his chain yelling in. So I just, do you know it's coming? Yes, I do.
So how did it come to pass that you called Saco PD in the middle of the night? Actually, it was about 2:47 in the morning to alert them to a situation.
When I was reading it, I said that would be a good time for us to do a welfare check on Sergeant Card when he came to drill. At no time did I think Sergeant Card was dangerous. I did not. I thought the file will go shoot up the reserve side. I thought that was a little over the top. I thought Ryan was exaggerating. And I said, so I called Saco. The thought process was that they could do the welfare check on Sergeant Card when he showed up to drill. When we got there, I said, all right, our job is if Sergeant Card shows up, we're gonna stall until we can get a hold of Saco PD and have them come in and do the welfare check, and we could back them up. That was my thought process to it all. I thought that's where Card was going to be, and I thought the welfare check could be done there at the Reserve Center in Saco with Saco PD.
So earlier today, you were given a copy of the transcript of your conversation with the Saco police sergeant.
That's correct.
Have you had a chance to read that?
I have.
And does that match your memory of the conversation you had with Sergeant Fahey?
Yes, it does.
And where in that do you tell her we would like Saco to do a welfare check?
Because the file said, please stop, check on welfare, that sort of thing. And I thought that would be a good place to do it. I didn't actually, I asked if she saw it. I believe it was a female.
And she
Fahey.
told you she hadn't seen it yet.
Correct.
So nobody had alerted Saco PD until you made that call.
Okay.
And nobody from the Army Reserve.
All right. I didn't know that, but okay. And I called him because in my head, this would be the perfect time to do the welfare check on Sergeant Card while he showed at the Reserve Center. The reason it's 2:30 in the morning is because that's my work shift.
I understand.
Okay.
So once Sergeant Fahey understood and had a chance to read the file 6, she agreed they would have personnel there at the armory the next morning. Is that what she told you?
Correct.
When did you find out they never did a welfare check themselves? They just were there for security purposes. Did you ever find that out?
I never found that out. I didn't know that Sergeant Card was not going to drill till maybe noon on Saturday. I didn't know somebody already knew that he wasn't going to be there. I didn't know that part at that time.
Were you at Saco that morning?
I was.
About when? When did you get there?
I'd say 7:30 a.m.
So Captain Reamer never told you that he'd spoken to Robert Card the day before and Robert Card said, I'm not coming to drill?
I did not know any of that. My office, my workspace is at one side of the building and theirs is someplace else. I'd have to go looking for Captain Raymer before I would actually see him.
Were you aware that First Sergeant Moat had done a very detailed and comprehensive written statement regarding Robert Card's mental state?
I had no idea of any of that. I found out when I watched the testimony that they both gave when they came here. That was the first time I ever heard of it.
But you did watch his testimony?
I did.
I believe you may have been on a vacation trip the day he testified and you were not available to be here that day?
That is correct.
And you heard him testify that he considered that a statement of probable cause for a yellow flag order.
I believe so, yes.
Had you ever considered that that was a route that should be done by law enforcement?
I did not think that Sergeant Card was dangerous. I thought his hearing implants were really messing with him and his decision-making. I did not even consider a yellow flag law.
You didn't think he was dangerous?
I did not.
In New York back in July, though, did you understand that he confronted a very good friend, Sergeant Reed, and appeared to be about to attack him?
The way I understood it was it was no more than pushing. And it did not surprise me that two good friends in the Army were pushing each other, horsing around. I did not take it as a big threat. I did not know the history that Sergeant Card had. I was not in position to.
So when did you find out that Sergeant Hodgson had reported that Sergeant Card had actually assaulted him, punched him in the face?
I'm not sure when that happened. I'll say it's before the night of the shooting, but I don't remember when that was. Again, it was all rumor to me. And I don't remember when it is. I do believe somebody did tell me that.
All right, Lieutenant, I think at this point, have no further questions. My colleagues may have a series of questions for things I have neglected to cover.
Any questions from others? First,
no. Lieutenant Yurek, so you didn't think he was a threat to warrant a yellow flag, but yet there was enough concerns that the Saco PD had to put people out to watch for him?
When I asked Saco PD, I didn't think put people out was what I was alluding to. Every interaction with Sergeant Card, though, first I thought he was a drunk person, and then I felt he just needed help.
Okay.
And when I spoke to Saco PD, I did not expect them to put 4 officers out. What I was looking for them to do was to do a welfare check, being backed up by the Army guys that were also police officers. We could have done it right there at the Reserve Center. And let's go from there to see where it went. That's what I was thinking.
Okay. And in your daily work, have you done a yellow flag?
I have not.
Have not. Okay. And what's your understanding? What would warrant you to do a yellow flag?
If he had threatened somebody or himself or others, then we would gather all those statements, PC him, bring him to a medical facility, meet with those in authority, and then issue him the yellow flag and go get his weapons.
Okay. And I'm trying to be a little bit more concrete here. Apologize for it. So when you say someone threatened, is it say, I'm going to punch someone, or I'm going to go right now to punch John?
I take that as I'm going to hurt somebody, cause them bodily harm.
So it may not need to be a specific target in a specific time frame, but as long as you.
I guess I would take it in either case, but again, it's not cookie cutter. I would take
Okay.
individual instance on its own merits
Okay.
and not cookie cutter that.
And were you aware of what kind of weapons he had at home?
No idea. I had no idea that he had those kinds of weapons.
Okay. Right.
I have a couple quick lines of inquiry. So you had no idea he had guns, and you heard Staff Sergeant Reed talk about how Mr. Card had previously brought weapons onto the base. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
Okay, all right. And then sort of finally, you testified that you were shocked to hear from Ryan Card that he had been discharged from the hospital, that you really expected him to be in the hospital for a long time.
Yes.
And so what was your thought about why he would be held for so long at the hospital?
I was wondering how they were going to cross the bridge of dealing with the implants and informing him of the things he was hearing he wasn't actually hearing. I thought that was a long road to go down, personally. So I thought he would have been there a lot longer.
And did you understand at that time that the court hearing that people were talking about, that was scheduled to take place was a hearing regarding whether he could be involuntarily hospitalized?
What I thought was what I was under the impression of was that the hearing was going to prioritize who was going to speak. Since I didn't know about it, I was not a priority. I thought everyone else that knew him better would be. When I spoke to Ryan Card, my first thought in the back of my head was, did that hearing happen? I did not ask Ryan Card if that happened.
Right. Did you understand what the hearing was for?
I think what I thought the hearing was for is so that they would have history to decide what they would do with Robert Card.
Right. Was it your sense that Robert Card would have agreed to stay at the hospital for a long time voluntarily?
Given the fact that he's so shy and an introvert, I don't think he would have liked any part about being in a strange place with strange people.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I just want to clarify about a couple points. One is you expected him to stay in Four Winds for a couple of weeks at least, longer, because you thought he was mentally ill.
What I expected was the Four Winds to do their assessment, then talk to us before he was released. I was very surprised that the Four Winds just decided to let him walk out the door.
And when you saw that file 6 in September, first of all, do you recall when you saw it?
I'm going to presume the day that it came out. It was on my desk because as we change shifts, one shift hands over info to the other, and it was handed to me then.
And so that's the first time you knew about this incident? You hadn't heard from your colleagues in the reserve?
Right, but again, I'm not in that chain where I would have been.
Right. But and since you're not in that chain, you learned about this threat to Sacco from the file 6.
That's correct. But I thought Ryan Card initiated that. I did not know that came from other sources.
Okay. So your conversation with Lieutenant Fahey or Sergeant Fahey, I guess, of the Saco PD, you wanted her department to do a well-being check, right?
That's correct.
You don't mention well-being check in this conversation.
I believe it said in the file 6 too. I wanted to make sure that she saw it, and I let the file 6 speak for itself.
But you do suggest that have police officers just sit in the rec center.
That's correct.
Okay, why did you think that the police
idea-
officer?
The idea of it was that if Sergeant Card walked in the door, we could call Saco PD and they were right there. The rec center is right next door. So we could easily say, all right, he's here. Could you come do the well-being check? It's a limited access gate. We could be standing there to let her in, or whoever the officer was, so that they could talk to Sergeant Card on their own. And we were just going to let them do their thing with us as observers watching to see where it went.
Did you think that there was a sufficient threat to the Saco facility that it might constitute probable cause to conclude that a crime had been committed?
When I saw the shoot up the National Guard post, I thought that was Ryan Card's poor language. My interactions with Sergeant Card have all been odd, but none of it was violent. I did not think that Sergeant Card would hurt anybody. I did not think he was violent.
I guess I'm a little confused as to why you would the file 6 went out, but you took the extra step of calling Saco Police Department to make sure it didn't fall between the cracks, right?
Correct. I was looking for them to do the well-being check with Sergeant Card while at the Reserve Center.
And you don't do that with all file 6s, certainly.
If they were members of my unit, then I would.
Okay. But you took the extra step to notify Saco PD about this threat to make sure they were aware, and you suggested that they put somebody in the rec center.
That's correct. That would, to facilitate the timing. If Sergeant Carr had walked in the building, we could call Saco and they would be right there. There wouldn't be a delay so that they could be right there to do the well-being check with Sergeant Carr
And to serve as protection
to service protection.
from a shoot up of the Saco facility?
I did not, I thought when it says shoot up the National Guard base, I thought that was Ryan Card exaggerating. I did not think Ryan Card at the time was dangerous at that time.
Okay. Have you ever had cause to store service members' guns at the Saco, personal guns at the armory?
We're not allowed to do that.
Are you aware that officers in the company have discussed it?
I had no idea any of that was even a discussion point.
Okay. I have nothing further.
I have one more.
First,
Sergeant, did you tell anyone in the battalion that you had contacted the Saco PD to alert them to this file 6?
No, I don't believe I did. I believe I was talking to them the night before. If I got my dates correct. And the drill was happening soon. So no, I did not say anything to the battalion.
Who would have been in charge in the battalion that day?
The battalion commander, I believe, was there. The sergeant major was there.
And so when you arrived, you did not tell them that you had had a conversation at 2:17 in the morning with the Saco PD about their being available to do a welfare check on one of the reservists.
I don't believe I did, no.
So was it a surprise to everyone but you that Saco PD was there?
I believe so. Again, I did not expect them to have such a huge footprint. 4 police cars, I believe it was 4. Again, I didn't think Sergeant Card was violent.
Okay.
So the idea of it all is, I believe I spoke to, no, I didn't. I don't believe I told anyone that I spoke to Saco PD. I was giving them a heads up.
Just a quick follow-up on file 6s. Typically, is the information contained in a file 6 considered credible?
Yes,
So the file 6, which stated that Mr. Card was known to be armed and dangerous, that's credible.
I would say so, yes.
And that he made threats to shoot up the National Guard Armory in Saco, that was credible.
I would say so, yes.
So as of the date that you saw the file 6, whenever that was, you would have found it credible that Mr. Card was armed and dangerous, so that he had weapons, that he was dangerous, and that he had made threats to shoot up the National Guard Armory in Saco.
I thought they were echoing what Ryan Card had said. And I thought Ryan Card had exaggerated on what Sergeant Card would do. I was drawing upon my personal experience with Sergeant Card. He was not a threat to me. He was separated from reality, but he was not a threat. I thought this was all verbiage from Ryan Card.
But you, I guess what I'm struggling with is that seems to be a contradiction between how you interpreted the information in the file 6 as being from Ryan Card, perhaps an exaggeration, with the understanding that once information gets into a file 6, it's, credible and actionable.
I felt that SAG, receiving the information from Ryan Card, that they would have to repeat what they were told from Ryan Card. And I felt that's why that was in there.
Okay, thank you.
So if you didn't think Mr. Card was dangerous, why did you call Saco PD?
Because I
Why
wanted
would-
them to do,
Again, the follow-up to that is also, why would you not just see him and see how it goes before you do anything else? Sorry.
because I felt we had to get the local law enforcement involved. If we had approached Sergeant Card and again, he got mad at us or he ran away, I did not want us suddenly having to call Saco to say, all right, this is what we did. And this is the problem that we have. I wanted Saco PD there so they could do the welfare check and see what they saw and let them make a decision.
So there was enough concern that it wasn't just going to be a regular conversation.
I wasn't gonna make any presumptions. I wanted Saco PD to do a welfare check to see exactly what Sergeant Card said. He had come out of the 4 winds. In my head, they would not have released him unless he was okay to be released. That's where I was with all this. And I said, let's get some other eyes on this. And the Saco PD, since we had an opportunity to see where he would actually be,
Mhm.
why not do it there?
Okay. In addition to the threat against the base, were you aware of the issue he had with Sergeant Reed?
At West Point,
Just attention because, well, at West Point for sure, but during that September day, they also made plans in case he shows up and acts up, have Sergeant Reed goes a different door to exit.
I heard of those plans, I'd say Saturday afternoon. I did not know those plans Saturday morning when I showed up to drill.
Before you call the Saco PD?
I did not know before Saco PD.
Okay. And knowing that after the fact, well, actually, because you knew it the same day, Saturday, that this was an issue? With Reed?
I believe I found out that they knew that Sergeant Card was not showing up, and then it came up in conversation that they were gonna have Reed go out the back door.
Okay, and did that change your assessment of how risky Mr. Card may be?
I could see how Sergeant Reed would escalate because he was the original catalyst at West Point. But I mean, again, I did not think Sergeant Card was deadly, which
Okay.
turned out to be.
Okay. I think.
Yes.
So at a typical battle assembly, do any of the soldiers have access to firearms inside the armory?
There's a process they have to go through, but it would take a while. But yes, they can get into the vault to get to the weapons. But they can't just arbitrarily walk up to the vault and open it. There are two people that have the combination, and you'd have to have a reason to get into the vault.
And Sergeant Card would have had access to the gate to get into the facility. There's a code you have to enter, but he would have that code.
I believe so, yes.
So if he showed up armed and dangerous and started to shoot up the armory, nobody would have a weapon to oppose him. He'd be able to do that with nobody preventing it, correct?
I believe so, yes. I'll say military weapons, but there's enough Army Reserve guys that are police officers. I believe they have their weapons with them when they drill.
They have what?
They have their issued weapons with, a lot of them are there in police cars. I would assume that their weapons are inside their cars.
But the police cars would be out in the parking area,
That's correct.
not inside the armory.
That's correct.
And looking at page 2 of that transcript right in the middle. Says, Yurek, you may want to just sit in the rec center. This is what you're telling Sergeant Fahey?
Correct.
Where's the rec center in relationship to the armory?
Right next to.
So you're telling them to just wait right in line of sight with the armory facility to react if there's a problem?
Yes, because if we had called them, I wanted them to be there right away.
You didn't want any delays in having them respond.
Correct.
Thank you.
Nothing further, and thank you, Mr. Yurek. You may step down. And the next witness is Sean
Hodgson.
Hodgson. I've seen your name spelled a couple of different ways. Is it Hodgson or Hodgson?
Just replace the G with the J, so Hodge, so.
Raise your right hand. State your name for the record.
Sean Hodgson,
Do you swear the testimony you'll give in the matter now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes.
May you lead, sir. Okay. Ellen Gorman will conduct the initial questioning of you, this lady right here.
Good afternoon. Could you tell me what your current status is in the Army Reserve?
I'm currently in the Army Reserve,
And what rank do you hold?
Staff Sergeant E6.
How long have you been in the Army Reserve?
18 years.
And did you have any military service before the Army Reserve?
No, it's always been in the Army Reserve.
Okay. Did you join the Army Reserve in Maine?
No, I joined it in New Hampshire.
And at what point did you switch to Maine?
I came out of the IRR in 2016. That's when I went to Maine.
And when did you meet Robert Card?
September of 2006.
Under what circumstances?
It was at drill in New Hampshire. It was my first drill in New Hampshire, after my initial training.
And was it his first drill as well?
No, he was in the unit prior.
And a friendship, you began a friendship with him at that point?
Yeah, we obviously talked and slowly grew, because we were both going through a divorce around the same time. So,
And did you maintain that friendship only through the Army Reserve, or did it expand to the rest of your life?
it did expand here and there. He lived so far away. He lived in Bowdoin. I lived in Rochester, New Hampshire, so it was kind of hard to link up, especially with both our jobs. But any chance we had, even after drill, he would spend nights at my house, knew my kids knew him.
And over the course of, say, from 2016, when you met, to 2023, how frequently did you see him?
It was at least every drill, but we talk over the phone anytime he would have any issues or just a vent or just a talk. Usually about fishing or whatever.
And you also texted with him with some regularity?
We mostly called because he's a truck driver. You're not allowed to text and drive. So.
Okay. Do you think you spoke with him weekly during that period of time?
At what time?
Up until 2023.
We were talking quite frequently because we worked at two places together, and driving down the road, especially at night at the last place we worked. It's more to let him vent one, talk about whatever. It's to keep ourselves awake and alert while we're driving down the road using Bluetooth hands-free. So it's just, he would tell me about what he's going to be doing, his plans or whatever.
So you felt that you knew him pretty well.
Yes.
He talked to you about his divorce, his child.
Yes.
Okay. And the difficulty that he had going through the divorce.
Yes.
Okay. How would you have described Robert Card before January of 2023?
Loyal guy, hard worker. He would give you his own shirt off his back. He had no qualms if you needed money. You didn't even have to ask for it. If you knew you were having trouble, he would just give it to you.
And what about his personality? Was he talkative, quiet?
You'd have to break him out of his shell. You would have to get to know him. Or you'd have a couple of beers and it kind of broke the ice a little bit. And then he would open up, but if he usually just kept to himself, he's pretty much an introvert. He didn't feel his comfort zone, I think. Even when he was teaching classes, that kind of broke him a little bit, but to get him out in the open, but even then he struggled with that. He always has.
When you talk about teaching classes, was that at West Point?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he also teach classes anywhere else?
Well, at the unit to practice on each other so we can be proficient in those classes. But as far as that, besides college, he told me about public speaking. He had a hard time doing that during college.
Did you notice that Mr. Card had any kind of hearing loss?
Yes, I've known that for years.
Did you notice that immediately upon meeting him?
No, this happened later on in his career, whereas the Army was gonna, basically he had to get surgery done or he was gonna be processed out of the military for his hearing. So he did get that surgery. I don't remember the year, but we were still in drilling out of New Hampshire prior to the 3-304th.
I'm sorry, the last before.
It was before he went up to the 3-304th in Maine. I believe he transferred in 2014. I just don't remember the exact year because so many years just kind of squishes into each other.
And the surgery, do you know what kind of surgery it was?
I believe he had tubes put into his ears so he could pass that the hearing test for the Army, and he did pass.
Did that seem to help the hearing loss at all?
To me, no, because, so when somebody's a higher rank than you, you're supposed to walk on his left side, and that was his really bad ear. He would push me and make me walk on his right side, so he could hear what I'm saying.
Okay. And at some point, did you know that Robert got hearing aids?
Yes, in 2023, I
Two-
believe,
2000,
23, I believe.
do you know when in 2023?
I'm not sure because he was talking about it so much. I can't just pinpoint a date. So much talk about it. He was excited that he can get him over the counter. He doesn't have to go to the doctor and spend $10,000. He can just spend 3 or 4. He did his research on these, so we end up getting over the counter hearing aids.
Do you know whether he actually saw a doctor to get them?
No, they do a tablet hearing test. The way he explained it to me, he actually put the hearing aids in my ear and made me take the test. And he left them up pretty loud, and they were pretty loud. And I took the test on my phone. It's just a quick thing, but with him, they monitor how much he's hearing, and they adjust it. I want to say every week or at least once a month, but where he kept turning him up, turning him down, turning him up. Even the company he bought him from was complaining to him. But he would fire back saying, if I don't want to hear people talk, I turn them down. And then, he listened to their Bluetooth, so he listened to his music through that if he really didn't want to hear people, like especially at work.
Did there come a time when you noticed a change in Robert Card's personality or actions?
Yes, slowly. So,
What was the first thing that you noticed?
his agitation went from, him challenging people politely, in public. He's done it with me, while I was there at the bowling alley. Other instances, he just gradually got more and more upset. He even went so far as to buy a punching bag and a speedball after his garage went up. And I thought that was going to help him with his anger, because he was pretty upset that people were talking about on the things they were saying.
Let me back up a little bit. When did he start talking to you about believing that people were talking about him?
I want to say July of 2022, because I was still living with him.
You
And
were
I
living
was
with him.
working for a separate company. I was a truck driver / delivery, so I delivered food. But I remember him calling me at work, and I got confused because I couldn't understand him. He was yelling. He was really upset. And I was like, "Are you mad at me?" He's like, No, just shut up and listen." He did use profanity, and I was like, "All right." And then he's kind of calmed down a little bit, and then explained to me that he heard people at work in the warehouse talking about him, and saying things.
Saying that he was a pedophile,
Yes.
that he was gay?
He had a dad bod. He looks fluffy. Oh, I could take him.
Well, that was his response.
No. This is stuff he's hearing from other people.
Oh, I'm
His
sorry.
response is him getting upset. He also went so far as to report it at work, because I suggested that. And I also suggested that he get a lawyer if he's that upset about it. He did contact a couple lawyers to try to counteract that, because he did go to work and report it several times to his manager or supervisor. I'm not sure what his title is anymore.
And was this at Maine Recycling?
Yes.
And this predated the acquisition of the hearing aids? This happened before he got the hearing aids?
Yes. Oh, wait. Yeah, it had been Maine Recycling. I was still working at a different company.
Okay.
So that was prior to him. That's when I first heard him say stuff like that to other people, was talking about him, and it just progressively, it wasn't all the time he was upset about it. It just progressively got worse over time.
And did his getting the hearing aids seem to have any effect on that?
I believe it made it worse.
Made it worse?
I believe he wasn't used to hearing. I already heard how loud they can be, and it's pretty deafening. And you can hear a pin drop from far away. And it actually hurt my ear, but, sorry, I'm losing track.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Yeah,
but
I'm just
what
sorry.
I'm trying to figure out is, did his complaints about hearing people say things about him increase in frequency, or did it change over time?
It increased. I believe he was pulling out words and pointing it all toward him. I don't think it, at first, you know, Robert Card's never lied to me, ever. So I believed what he was saying was true. Even being on public with him, he would, you know, say stuff, and I've seen him approach people. I've seen him, you know, this small little girl had been 3 to 4 years old, very small. We're in the horseshoe for the bowling alley, and we were on one side, and Card said, "Oh, hi," and I seen a big guy come grab her right up and take her away, and he's like, "Yep, see, told you, this is what people say about me. They got a checklist, I'm like, "What's on this checklist, dude?" "Oh, you know." "No, I don't." And I kind of didn't want to press him a lot because I knew how agitated he got. Because I wanted to change the subject of bowling, or, hey, give me tips, because I was new at 10 pins, so.
So you said that when you first noticed the complaint about hearing voices, you were living with Mr. Carr.
I didn't know he was hearing voices.
That he was
I
complaining.
took his complaint as legitimate.
Okay. During what period of time were you living with him?
June 1st, 2022 is when I first moved in with him. I moved out toward the beginning of September 2022 when I found my own place.
Okay. All right,
That was a temporary thing. I wasn't even,
right.
I was up here helping Augusta at the company I worked for, because I was actually out of Dover, New Hampshire, and I had a little trouble of my own, and that's why he's offering to help me. So it was supposed to be temporary, it ended up becoming more permanent.
Okay, so he helped you out during those 3 months?
Yes.
Okay,
He told me to get my butt up here.
okay.
With profanity, I just don't want to say that. So,
We've never heard it before.
I know, but I don't know. I also don't want to get in trouble for using it, man.
Maybe in the army, I've heard it.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Did you, you were going to drill monthly with Mr. Card at that point, correct? Say June?
My attendance wasn't great since I've been home from deployment.
Okay,
I've had a hard time, just in general. So I would just get an excused absence. I try to do an RST, maybe do some classes to make up those drills at home. So,
did you and he ever go to a drill together?
yes, we,
Okay.
obviously, yeah, even prior,
In the year before, January of 2023, did you go on any drills together?
to be honest with you, I can't remember. You have to look at the attendance sheet, because if we were at drill, we'd be attached to the hip or be around each other. So it's kind of all squished together to me. So to differentiate what drills I actually went to and not what, so if I went to drill, normally he would be there.
Okay. Were you at West Point in July of 2023?
At the beginning of July, roughly. I don't know the exact dates.
So were you there, when he was placed at the hospital?
No,
Before his placement at the hospital out of West Point in July of 2023, did you ever have any conversation with any of your superiors in the reserves about Mr. Card's complaint of people talking about him?
yes, I just don't remember the exact date. I believe it's right after I heard it when I was living with him. I called the commander to make him aware because he was upset at work. There's not much I can do about his civilian job, but at least I can make the commander, and I don't remember if I called the first sergeant. It's not like me not to, but I'm not sure. But so they're aware that I was concerned people at the unit were saying stuff about him, because I believed Robert Card.
So when you called Captain Reamer, it was to ask him to do something about people trash talking about Robert.
Well, and to investigate it, and maybe there's some classes that need to be had for harassment and stuff like that. He would know better how to handle that situation. I'm just the one reporting it initially, but I
Okay.
believe it was back in 2022. Because I would have reported it right away.
Okay,
And I even told Sergeant Card that I reported him, and it wasn't to get him in trouble, it was to help him, and he's like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. He got a little agitated with me when I did.
and Captain Reamer's response at that point was he would look into it.
Oh, you would investigate it,
Okay.
absolutely, especially with the claims that he had, that's pretty serious, it's, sexual harassment in general, like, defamation of character, I mean, it would hurt personally, because he knew some of these people personally, so, and we worked together, so.
Okay, let me take you back to July of 2023. You said that you were at West Point earlier in the month.
Yes, ma'am.
What were you there for?
I was there for what they call our day. It's just to process new soldiers in, we don't do that. We're just basically traffic control. We're the first faces. They see actual soldiers. Obviously, we're not there the cadets run this, the West Point runs it. We're just there to help support.
And how long were you deployed to West Point in July?
I was on orders, I believe, I believe 8 days, but don't quote me. It wasn't very long
Okay,
because I wasn't allowed to be at ranges at that time because of my own legality of stuff.
okay. And you had come and gone by the time Robert arrived at West Point?
That's correct.
Okay. When did you learn that Robert had been hospitalized?
When I got the phone call from the first sergeant, I didn't know what was going on. He was very vague, but he pretty much told me that Sergeant Card got himself in trouble. He needed to get a hold of his father. I didn't have his father's number. And then I could roughly remember where his parents live. But I was like, hey, I know his home of record he uses is his father's address because all his mail goes there. So he was able to give me the address. And I ran straight from Lewiston all the way to his father's house. And I got his number and I texted it to the first sergeant.
This is First Sergeant Moat.
No, this would have been Kerry Getchell.
Sorry,
Kerry Getchell,
Getchell. Okay.
Master Sergeant Kerry Getchell, but he's retired, so.
You said you went directly to Bodenham and met with Mr. Card Senior?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your conversation with him about?
It's like the Army won't tell me exactly what's going on. The only information I got is that they needed to talk to you and that he got himself in some sort of trouble. And I was very concerned and I later learned, and I missed a phone call the night before from Sergeant Card, but I didn't answer because I believe I was sleeping at the time, but yeah, I was told to go run over there and get the number from his dad so they could talk about his medical, because next to kin stuff, I guess. They wouldn't talk to me about it.
Okay. And that was the first time you had met Mr. Card Senior?
That would be the second or third time. I just met them that prior Easter for the first time.
And other than telling Mr. Card Senior that Robert had gotten in some trouble and they needed to get a hold of him, did the conversation involve anything else?
No, it was pretty quick. And then I was like, well, here's my number. If you can, let me know what's going on. I don't remember if he actually did or not. I'm going to say no, but I'm not sure. But when I did learn he was in the hospital, Robert Card called me from the hospital from Four Winds.
Okay. And do you know what the date was that he called you?
I don't remember. It was a New York number. So my phone, I didn't know this till recently, trying to look up information for you guys. That it deletes automatically. And I don't know how to get that history. So I don't know the exact date, man.
When Robert called you, what did he say?
He was pretty upset with Sergeant Reed, Bull, Wainwright. They were talking about him. He explained what happened, his side of it. He was pretty upset
And what was his side of it?
that they were saying stuff about him. And he was pretty upset. He can't believe it. I knew these guys, and he just went on and on.
Did he tell you what the doctors were telling him was going on?
In a nutshell, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was relaying that information to me. So whether it's true or not, it's only from Robert Card. So
What did he say?
he claimed he was misdiagnosed. The medication that they gave him, he doesn't want to take it. He doesn't like how it made him feel. He thought it made him feel lazy. He's not a lazy person. He's a very hard worker. Yeah. And I had several conversations while I was in the hospital. And even at one point, I learned from him that they were going to put him before a judge and make a determination. And that was the week prior to me picking him up, or it was the week prior. I just don't remember the exact day. I called the command and, hey, he might be getting out, but might be staying longer, but he's going to be put for a judge next week. That was when I heard about it because it was from Robert Card, because I was relaying everything that he was pretty much telling me to the command.
So when Robert told you that he might be going before a judge, did you pass that on to Captain Reamer or to anyone else in the battalion?
I believe Captain Reamer,
Okay.
because I said, well, because I don't know when they laid mention. I knew they took the rental vehicle away, but they weren't sure if they should leave it there for him so he'd have a ride back home. I was like, well, I don't know when he's getting out, so we might as well take it back. I can go up there and pick him up.
Okay.
I was like, he's my friend. I'll be there no matter what. And
Hold on just a minute. So what you said was, there was no need to leave a car there for him. You would go pick him up whenever he needed to be picked up.
that's correct.
Okay.
But we're still waiting on, see if he's gonna be put before a judge.
How many conversations did you have with Robert while he was at the hospital?
Lots, I didn't keep, it was pretty much every day, or every chance he had a chance to call, he would call me.
And what was his mood like when he called you?
It was up and down. Mostly with complaints about other people that were there. I know he got into it with one girl. They actually separated her from, I guess they have units. They pulled her right out of the unit because he claimed that she was saying stuff about him and he confronted her. I don't know if he used violence or not. I think it's just his words and his anger, and he would have pretty much told her where to go.
Did he tell you that he was taking the medications they were giving him?
He told me he was pretty much playing the game.
Playing the game?
He's smart. He can pass all their tests. He even told me that he told these people that too. So,
That he could play the game?
he was just gonna get through the motions. He told him straight out, I'm answering all the questions and I'm telling you what you want to hear. Cause I don't want to be here. And he's like, I challenge you guys to put me before a judge because you're violating my rights. And he went on about it. And they, you know, I got the phone call and, oh, I'm getting out. Okay. So I called, I don't remember exactly when I called Captain Reamer, but I called them and made notifications to my chain of command. So I'm not sure if I called Mode or both before I picked him up, but they knew I was going out there to pick him up that day.
What about any members of Robert's family? Did you report to them what you were hearing from Robert?
I don't remember at that time. I don't think so.
Had you met Ryan Card at that point?
I've never met Ryan Card.
Okay.
The only time I spoke to him was unfortunately after the heinous crime.
And what about Robert's sister? Did you ever meet her?
I never met her personally. I did talk to her. That's in 2023 in the spring, because I was working for Maine Recycle at the time, and she shared her concerns about Robert Card, especially she pointed out that he answered the door with a handgun. And she asked me for my opinion, and at that time, I mean, he wasn't in trouble or anything. This is prior to him going to West Point. And, I said, well, he's got every right to have his weapon. Or was he threatening? No, but it still alarmed me, I believe is what she said, but she was telling me the same stuff I've already been hearing from Robert Card. And I was like, well, he's never lied to me. And I told her what I witnessed, but I don't think he's a danger at that time. And, so
Did you know that Colby and his mother had gone to the school officer to see if they could get some help for Robert?
he was upset with that.
Robert was?
Yes, he was.
How did he find out about it?
They called him, I believe. I'm not sure if he got called or went down there, but I remember him complaining about it.
Okay,
He was pretty upset. Because his son wasn't talking to him at the time and he was trying to figure out why, but it was because he was complaining about people talking about him. He was very upset. I didn't know the context with his son because he was already moved out by the time I came up to Maine in 2022.
in any of the conversations that you had with Robert while he was at the hospital, did the issue of removing his weapons come up?
Yes.
What was that conversation about?
They were concerned that he was gonna have weapons going home. I agreed. And I talked to Robert Card. It took some convincing. I was like, look, dude, people are concerned. I mean, at least hear them out, temporarily get rid of your handguns. You can revisit later, just, get help and be assessed and make sure you're safe. And I was like, if temporarily taking away your weapons, it's not that big a deal. And I was like, you can give them to your father. So I texted, and called his father. I don't remember exactly what I said, but, it was to bring Kobe with him because he made it a point to say he wanted his son there to help collect those weapons prior
So,
to coming home.
so Robert agreed that his father could remove the weapons from his house. He wanted Colby there to either watch or assist.
That and I believe Kobe knew where they were. 'Cause
Okay.
I didn't know where they were in the home.
And did you have a conversation with Robert Card Senior about that plan?
He said, okay, and I did text it to him.
Who's,
He's Robert Card's father, when I called him to ensure that they were removed, and he's like, yep, or said, okay, and then there wasn't much conversation at all. So I took it as they were removed at that time.
okay. And
And I did relay that to my chain of command.
I'm sorry,
I did relay that to my chain of command. as
to
well.
Captain Reamer?
It was probably to both. I say chain of command because I've been talking to First Sergeant Mode and Reamer at this time, so I might have talked to them both or one or the other, because they would tell each other anyway.
Did you have a conversation with Colby?
No,
And the conversation that you had with Robert Card Senior, you
His-
explained that his son had agreed that his father could remove the guns?
yes,
And Robert Card Senior's response was, yep,
Okay.
or okay?
Yeah.
And that would be,
it wasn't much of a conversation. I was thinking he read my text. And I was just confirming with him that he understood, so, and to take the weapons, so.
okay. When did you learn that Robert was being released from the hospital?
Well, I knew that date. If he didn't go see the judge, he was gonna be released that day. Or see the judge and be kept longer or be released. I was just waiting for him to call me, tell me to come pick him up.
Okay,
So it might have been like the night before.
and what did he call when he said? What did he say when he called, excuse me?
He's gonna be released tomorrow. I need you up here because they won't release me to myself. And I already knew that the rental vehicle was gone and that he would need a ride home.
So you drove from Maine to West Point,
No, Four Winds,
Four Winds, sorry, and picked him up.
yes.
Did you talk with any of the medical personnel when you picked him up?
When I drove up, I was in normal clothes, a beard. I had my ID to prove who I was. And, I parked my vehicle thinking I would have to talk to somebody or medical staff to ensure who I was. And I saw him waving through the window at the door and I'm like, okay. So I parked the vehicle, locked it up and I walked up. And the next thing I know, he's coming right out the door with his bags. I'm like, all right. He's like, oh, I just want a cigarette. So give him a cigarette and we're walking toward the car. He's, oh, you want me to drive? And I was exhausted. So I was like, here you go. I have some other medical stuff going on that I was glad to give him the keys because he is an excellent driver.
And the drive back to Maine was 5 or 6 hours?
About 6.5. Total round trip of 610 miles.
And did Robert talk during that time?
Yes.
About what?
His stay at the hospital, how he flipped up his mattress, punched it till his knuckles bled. Like how that girl and other people were talking about him, how he confronted that girl, just reiterating stuff that he's already told me over the phone. Just over and over again. I tried to get him to talk about other stuff. And I did at some points, but at one point he started, hitting my steering wheel. I was like, dude, don't break my car. And oh, all right. So he calmed down and yeah, it was pretty much the whole ride home. It was just him with the list of complaints of, it's because of Reed, Numble, and Wainwright. He was mad at all of them. He was like, I wish they would just tell me to my face so I could punch him in the face. And he just kept going on and on the whole way back until we got to Saco at the unit so he could get his vehicle.
And when you stopped at Saco so he could get his vehicle, you went on home and he went on home at that point?
Not right away. He was complaining that his doors better be unlocked because he left his keys with the full-time staff, I believe. I don't remember exactly who, but the full-time staff informed me that they left his keys locked in his gas tank. So now he was concerned that his vehicle's locked and he can't get into his fuel tank or the cover because the vehicle's locked. And I guess it's a pop. I'm not sure if it's a pop or if you have to have the door unlocked to press it to open it. He was afraid he was gonna have to break it to get his keys.
He had to break in to get his keys?
No, the doors were unlocked,
Okay,
thankfully, but he was complaining about that. I remember that.
okay. After you left him at his vehicle, when was the next time you spoke with him?
I was on his ride home.
And was
He
he,
was
was he-
complaining. Well, he made some funny comments to me where it made me believe, I didn't notice it right away because, he was pretty upset his doors were unlocked. And it was unusual for him to have his back seat folded down. Usually it would be up unless he had something back there, which I've never really seen him put that seat down. I caught wind of it and he was pretty upset. And then I ran out back to relieve myself because it was a long ride. And I came back because the building's locked up. That's why I had to run out back. I came back and he was, oh, everything's fine. And he's just like, okay. And then he called me on the way he was driving home because I asked him, I have to report to Captain Reamer to make sure that you make it home safe. I make it home safe. I already told him we made it to the unit. Let me know when you get home. And he called me on his way home complaining that they put his bowling ball on top of his laptop. So it made several complaints and his stuff was put in the vehicle for him from the rental vehicle and from his room.
at any time during that 6.5 hour ride, did Robert Card tell you what the discharge plan for him was?
He mentioned about the 10-year hold. He can't have a weapon for 10 years, but that was in New York. I was like, well, because he was mad about the silencer he purchased. Got the stamp, everything. It was literally, it was a lot of money for that. And all he had to do was go down and pick it up. I was like, well, with this new piece of paper they just gave you, even though you're voluntary, technically, I would talk to a lawyer and ensure, because if you lie on that form, you're going to get yourself in trouble. I was like, so if you don't want to get the lawyer, I would check that off, that you were in an institution just to be safe. But if you want to know for sure, it's like, I don't know the laws of Maine and nor am I a lawyer. I would suggest to talk to a lawyer about that 10-year thing of not having weapons.
Did he mention any obligation to take medications or follow up with a
Yes.
therapist?
He was supposed to follow up with New York, telephone and video. The medications he was still taking, he took them, I'm guessing a couple weeks after, because he was complaining that it was slowing him down at work. It was making him feel lazy. He didn't like the way he felt, and I was like, well, then talk to these therapists and talk to your doctor. They can adjust whatever you need. Because he complained he was misdiagnosed. He has high anxiety, that's his problem. And then he thought, well, the medication makes me lazy, so he stopped taking it. I was like, great. And then he started telling the people in New York, because they didn't have a facility down here to give him counseling. They were trying to do video chat with him. And he would pretty much tell him, he would answer the phone and tell him, no, I'm not doing it, and hang up on him. He did it several times.
Was there any conversation about getting weapons back during the ride back?
No. There was no mention of weapons. He was just, yeah, he was very upset about the whole
He
situation.
was upset about the 10-year hold and the inability
Just
to
being
get
in the
asylum.
hospital in general, people talking about him, he can't believe that he trusted these people, and it went on and on and on.
All right, and how frequently did you see Robert from, say, the from beginning of August to the middle of September?
Quite often. I even went to his house at one point because he had a bed delivered and he was running late coming home. For whatever reason, I wasn't working. I don't remember the exact reason, but he called me to rush to his house because the guys bringing a new bed were there, and he didn't want to have to cut up his old bed and take it out. So I went in there with the movers, because I would be there before he would get out of work or be at home to ensure that happened. And that's when I discovered that he still had his weapons, because I'm not supposed to have access to weapons or possess them due to my legal stuff. So I was surprised to see it on the floor underneath his bed, and I was quite upset because I'm not going to get in trouble. In my head, I actually yelled at him because of it. I walked straight out of the house and movers took out his old bed. And I got upset with Card because he put me in a pretty difficult situation.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah.
And his response was,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll make sure it doesn't happen. And then I don't know what he did with the weapon at that time. I was pretty upset, so I wouldn't know anyway. It wasn't in the house, but he said, all right, I've taken care of it. And then I helped him move their brand new bed into his bedroom, but it wasn't there in plain sight. I had no idea where he put it. I was just very upset that he put me in that position. And yes, I'm very vocal with my friends. I don't hold back. They're my friends.
after the hospitalization, did you notice any change in Robert?
He was more aggravated.
Or,
He was aggravated, more upset, very angry, and it grew and grew. It increased after the hospitalization. More frequently that he would hear at random places, and I did challenge him several times that, how did they know you? Like, you're in Massachusetts, some random girl at a Dunkin' Donuts at a gas station is not gonna know who you are. Because he complained about some of the stops, one stop in particular, his first stop. It's the Hudson Depot, and he was complaining, like, he's like, I can't believe these workers just can't go outside and smoke a cigarette, just leave me alone, not talk about me. I don't understand it. They're trying to help me and I don't want their help. I could do it faster on my own. Like, he was increasingly getting worse. And more angry every day as I talked to him.
and did you move back in with Robert at some point after the hospitalization?
I was supposed to, toward the middle to end of August. He was pretty upset that I was paying for rent. And he wanted to get the garage done and needed help with the trailer to get the windows in and siding. And he had all, during the winter, we would pick a room, tear it apart, and rebuild it, remodel it basically to where it would make it cleaner, and some of the stuff was outdated, so we wanted to update everything.
And so the plan was to have you move back in, save money on rent and help him with the work?
That's correct, and pay him rent instead of me paying.
And did that ever happen? Did you move back in?
I dragged my feet because he was increasingly getting worse. And then it was when he punched me in the face.
Okay, let's talk about that. So, do you remember the date of
Just
Yes.
a second. Do we have a hard time to stop today?
4:00?
4 o'clock. Okay, so at some point when it's convenient, stop for a short break.
Why don't
and
we take, we can do it now. That's fine.
You want to do it right now?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take, what do you want, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
10-minute break, and we'll come back promptly at 10 because we want to make sure we get through with your testimony today. Roger. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Mr. Hodgson, when we took a break, I was just about to speak with you about an event that occurred in September of 2023. Could you tell me how that day started?
Yeah, we got off work. I typically sleep during the day. We made plans to go out that night. He just walks into my apartment. He does it several times and wakes me up. So, and he usually liked to drive. He hates my driving. He literally said I drive like a grandma. So he doesn't like my driving, but we ended up at the casino. We're fine. He's like, all right, I'm out. I was like, well, I'm still playing with my winnings, so I'm just gonna finish up here and I'll meet you at the car. He's like, yeah, no problem. I want to take a nap. So it didn't take me long to lose my money, trust me.
What time was this?
It was after midnight. 'Cause they don't serve drinks after at midnight. It doesn't matter if you have drinks or not, they will collect it. So we drank mostly, we really didn't drink there anyway. We drank Mountain Dew or coffee. It was all free, water. And then we just stay at the tables and just stay as long as we can because we have to be up for a while to get some sleep for the next shift.
So Robert went out to the car, you finished your winnings,
Right.
then you went out to the car.
Yes.
What happened?
I woke him up. He had the doors locked. So I had to knock on the window. Oh, yep, time to go. And then he gradually said that, oh, yep, these people are saying stuff here too about me. And then he was on the back roads and he just started flipping. They ruined my life.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
He started flipping out, punching the steering wheel. He was saying that they ruined his life. Reiterated what they were calling him. Just flipping out. Some of the stuff I couldn't make out. It was so loud. And I kept repeating myself. I was like, no one's worth your life. Nobody's worth you listening to and have it affect your life. Nobody's worth your freedom over this. And I took it as being extremely threatening. And then at some point, he was driving erratically. I seen tree after tree. I don't know if we went sideways or not, but I begged him to pull over and let me drive. He was that, I thought we were gonna crash. At some point, he did punch me in the face, told me to shut the F up, shut the F up, do not say another word. So we got on Lisbon Street. And I was like, you know what, just I need a pack of smokes, drop me off at the gas station. I'll walk home from there. Because I knew they had cameras. But when I got out of the vehicle, I reiterated. I was like, hey, just so you know, I love you. I'll always be there for you. I'll never give up on you. Shut the door and he had that blank stare on his face. He wouldn't even look at me when I was talking to him. He was just dead stare front. And he slowly drove away. I went in and still shocked that he punched me and upset that he didn't want anything to do with me anymore. So he said that at one point too. Like, oh, you too? You probably seen the videos and you're hiding it from me. Because I've never seen videos about people talking about you, dude. And I was like, if I did, I'd show you. Because he believed he wanted to defend himself. And these people wouldn't show him because that's the only reason why he had Facebook. He just got it that past summer because he doesn't even like social media. It took him years before he got a smartphone.
And did you report what happened to any of your supervisors in the Army Reserve?
Yeah, I believe I called Captain Reamer. I was quite upset. He did answer. Don't ask me the exact date. I just know Tuesday into Wednesday, because we have our normal days off on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So I was quite upset. And then just to make sure I was clear, I texted, I don't remember the exact date I sent that text out. I did turn in my taxes, so I believe it was the 15th. And I wanted to make sure that I was absolutely clear on my concerns because his behavior was that bad. And the totality of circumstance, he's told me some screwed up stuff, like, it wasn't abnormal for him to go to the bowling alley before work. It was just some stuff that he would say, oh, I'm such the P word. I'm like, what? So, oh, never mind. 'Cause he would never come out and directly just blatantly threaten, like full out. I just got bits and pieces of it, and what'd you say? Oh, no, don't worry about it. And he would just stop himself. He would catch himself.
So you had a conversation with Captain Reamer and
Sorry.
then you sent a text out
Yes,
the next day, 2 days later?
it's whatever I know that night, Tuesday and Wednesday, I did make a phone call. I did talk to Reamer, and then I sent out the text. I'm not sure if it was the next night or that night. I'm not
And do
100%.
you recall to whom you sent the text?
Yes, First Sergeant Moe and Captain Reamer. I pretty much copied and pasted it. I know there was some difference on the messages, but I don't remember what they were.
Okay, and in that text, you said, change the passcode to the unit gate and be armed if SFC card does arrive, period, please, period. I believe he's messed up in the head, period, and threaten the unit, other and other places. Did you hear him make any threats to the unit?
Yes, he wanted to punch Reed in the face on bull. He wanted to confront Wainwright. It was a list of people he was pretty upset with. I was afraid he was gonna go there, and knowing how capable he is, it might escalate from there, because I literally just witnessed him getting worse and worse and worse, and it was quickly escalating.
Okay,
And I explained that to the first sergeant.
and you said that when I dropped him off, he was concerned his weapons were still in the car. I believe they were at the unit.
Yes, ma'am. That was the going back to my earlier statement about when I dropped him off, of my concern, because he was acting. He was really mad that his doors were unlocked. He's really got nothing in there of value. It was usually trash on the floor and bottles, so he wasn't very cleanly. He did clean it out once in a great while, but normally to be bottles on the front seat of Mountain Dew or empty water bottles from work. So I'm not such.
And in that same text, you went on to say, no one searched his vehicle on federal property. And yes, he still has all of his weapons. I'm not there. I'm at my own place. I believe he's going to snap and do a mass shooting. When you sent that text out, who was the first person who responded?
I honestly don't remember. I talked to them both.
You talked to them both.
Yes.
And did they ask you why you had written that you believed he was going to do a mass
The
shooting?
way he was behaving was very threatening. He was escalating. It was just the totality of circumstance through the events leading all the way up to that moment where I was pretty convinced he was going to use harm. I've also seen him carry a handgun in the bowling alley prior to him going to. And I was like, what's that for? He's like, well, I'm not drinking, so it's fine. I didn't realize in Maine, because I've never carried a gun in Maine, just in New Hampshire. So I didn't realize that if the establishment serves alcohol, you weren't allowed to have a weapon. The only people that can have a weapon is either on duty or off duty police that are absolutely not drinking. So I wasn't aware of that at that time. So for me, it was normal because I used to carry. Sorry.
I want to stick to the
Yeah,
topic. here.
sorry.
It's all right.
Everything.
So when you had a conversation with Moat after you sent this text to him, did you back off from anything that you said? Did you take back anything that you had written in the text?
No, I stood by that text.
When you spoke with Captain Reamer, did you back off or tone down anything that you had written in the text?
No, they were asking me why I thought that. Did he make direct threats? But I was like, yeah, I feel as though he's going to do this. It's gradually getting worse. And yes, he did threaten people at the unit. And knowing that most of them are police officers, I didn't know if he was going to show up to drill. I honestly didn't know until I went to work and saw his car at work those 2 days. Because he was making plans to go to drill, and then it changed to he's going to go to the Sunday drill. This is me just knowing it prior Because it was the same week that he hit me that we were going to drill that weekend.
Did you go to drill that weekend?
I was excused prior to the incident.
So you knew at the time that you sent this text out that you were not going to be in Saco that weekend?
That is correct. Because I was excused prior to that.
Did you have one conversation with Captain Reamer about this text or more?
I honestly don't remember. I talked to Captain Reed and the first sergeant quite often.
Okay.
If I have a concern, I will call them. Or if I have questions,
Did you, after, so Mr. Carr did not show up in Saco.
correct, because I saw his car at work is how I found out.
Did you have any conversations with him after he hit you and before the shooting on October 25th?
Yes, he called me 1 to 2 days afterwards, Thursday. They accidentally left me off the, they forgot to assign me a load or a route to go on. But I had questions about my pay, so I ended up going into work to talk to my supervisor and to have her explain to me how I'm getting paid, because we don't get paid the traditional hourly rate. So I happened to be there and I did see Card, and then I went home and he ended up calling me, yelling at me, saying I'm posting stuff on Facebook. And I was like, dude, I haven't posted anything on Facebook since I believe 2017, when I got myself in trouble for my own posts. You know, not in, like serious trouble, but it was concerning enough. People were worried. I've been pulled in with my job, my civilian job, and the army to talk to me. Like, are you okay? This is very upsetting. So I learned not to post anything. The only thing that's on my Facebook is, and I explained all this to him basically in a nutshell. And he's like, well, now you got to make arrangements to pick up your stuff, because I was actively trying to win with him. Yeah, I was like, okay, and he hung up on. The next time he tried to call, I was at work, and I already asked my boss to try to keep us separated different times if he could. He said, I can't promise that, and I know it's hard to do because, you know, I still passed him at work several times after I reported him. I knew the Army reported him, but he tried to call and I didn't pick up because I was going down the road and I didn't want it to be a workplace issue. I didn't want it to affect the civilian. I just wanted him to get help. So I knew that Captain Reamer and the first sergeant, being police officers and the positions that they're in, they would have more resources or more ideas, or at least who to contact for advice more than I would to get him help. That's why I didn't answer. I just, sorry.
So, Mr. Hodgson, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but we have a transcript of Captain Reamer speaking with one of the Saco officers, explaining that he was taking your report with a grain of salt and that he was not perhaps as concerned about it as the language might generally cause someone to be concerned. Do you know why he would take your word with a grain of salt?
No, I don't. You'd have to ask him.
You didn't tell him you were exaggerating.
No,
You didn't tell him you'd made it up.
no.
Okay. So
I knew he got contacted because, you know, that's what the Army does. They'll investigate. So
after that weekend in Saco, did you speak with anyone else in the Army Reserve about Robert Card before the shooting?
it would have been Staff Sergeant Reed.
And what did you discuss with him?
What happened in the car that night, his behavior. Obviously he knew I was picking him up because I let him know the night before or the day of, I don't remember. So I talked to Reed too. Yeah.
He was also, Card also considered him to be a good friend.
Yes, until he thought Reed was talking about him.
When did you learn of the shooting in Lewiston?
I was going down the street. I already picked up my tractor, and I've already seen a police officer fly by me on Washington Street going into Auburn. It goes down from 2 lanes to 1 at 25 miles an hour. And he flew right around me. I didn't know what was going on. Picked up my trailer. I noticed that his load was done and I took note that his car wasn't at work. He's usually an hour early. Or he'll take a nap if he needs to, because if he has a different start time. I noticed that walking by his load, because he had the same trail and the same bay and the same route, because he trained me on that. It was done. So I kept that in note. I secured my own load, got my paperwork and did what I had to do. I was going down 196. I just happened to be on the phone with a girl that worked at Family Dollar on Sabata Street. I just saw a line of police cars and ambulances going every which way. And she goes, "There's an active shooter." I know it was coming. She said,
All right, and
I knew it was him, because of the places that she was naming off that were being hit.
you were interviewed after the shooting by Detective Herb Layton from the Maine State Police. Do you recall that?
Ma'am, I talked to, it's 3 days of nonstop talking.
Okay.
So I honestly, it got to the point where I was asking them to identify themselves. I'm like, "Are you police? Are you the press?" I'm like, most of the time, even if they told me, I was so inundated with phone calls, including my own unit everyone was trying to get information. I believe I even got upset at one police officer and told him this wasn't a blank measuring contest. You hear public safety, start working together. I got really upset because I was getting asked the same questions over and over for 3 days.
So during the
So-
time when Robert Card was still missing, did anyone ask you where they should look for him?
Yes,
And what did you tell them?
I said one of the possibilities would be Maine Recycle.
And do you recall who you gave that information to?
I don't, I know for a fact that the night that he found that previous morning, the FBI picked me up. Because they wanted to face to face, and two, I needed clothes. Because I hadn't gone home, I wasn't allowed to go home or get my vehicle. I literally had to work, tractor trailer, so I had them bring me back to my house after they again made sure he wasn't there, and then I got my bag and left. And then in my parking lot or the driveway is when I showed him Texas, my notes. So, and I believe I turned in my notes.
So one of the questions that's come up throughout the course of the commission work is why Robert Card chose to do the shootings at Just in Time and then Shemengi's. Can you give us any constructive information about why he would have chosen those places?
I never been to Smitty's with him because he's already stopped going by the time we started getting on the same schedule. He heard a lot of people talk about him at both places. He was very upset that he couldn't do the things that he could enjoy. He couldn't go there and because we were supposed to be on a bowling league, he ended up stopping that last second. So it's just, I give a definitive answer of why, I don't know.
Were those both places where he believed people were talking about him
Yes.
when he was there?
Felt very strongly. I think I have a list of places where I turned into the commission.
Okay.
But yeah, Maine Recycle was part of it. And specifically, I knew that he disliked him. And I believe some people at first did start talking about him and it just ate him alive at work. Because some of these people are convicted pedophiles and criminals that work as temp agencies inside the warehouse. So
Okay.
that's from his mouth. So knowing that for a fact, I have no idea.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hodgson. Those are all the questions that I have, but I am certain that my colleagues will have some.
Any other questions, Mr. Ruffalo?
So when he,
Hold on,
Did
hold
they
on.
switch?
Just wait.
I was occasionally having trouble hearing you, so I may ask you a question you've already answered. I apologize if I did, but when you were coming back from the casino, he was driving really recklessly.
Yes,
And do you know where on the face of the earth he was doing that driving?
he was, I don't think he cared. He was so upset that he was just flying down the road and punching the steering wheel and Yeah, he was talking erratically, yelling. Um, so, yeah.
But you started at the Oxford Casino.
Say what?
You had started at the Oxford Casino.
Before we left, yeah, because we left there to go home.
How long after you left the casino before you started doing this dangerous driving?
As soon as we got into the back roads, probably within 5 to 10 minutes, he started slowly into it and then all of a sudden just snapped.
And as you went along the road, at some point he became angry enough to punch you.
That's correct.
He was driving
That's correct.
and you were in the front passenger seat.
That's correct.
And was this in his Subaru?
Yes,
And so did he use his right hand to punch you?
yes.
And where did he hit you?
On the corner of my face, bottom jaw.
Pointing to the
Yeah,
left side
right
of your
here.
jaw.
So,
Did it hurt?
yeah,
So it was not a tap, it was a
oh,
punch.
it was legit. It hurt for a couple of days after that.
It hurt for a few days afterwards.
That's correct.
And you asked him afterwards why he did that or something like that?
No, I knew why he did it. It's because I was challenging him. And telling him that, even if he was hearing these for real, that these people aren't, well, I don't know why you're listening to them. They're not worth letting them ruin your life. To get under your skin, it's not worth it. And I kept repeating that and, oh, they ruined my life. I'm like, you've got a life. You have so much going for you. And at one point, he got sick of hearing it and nailed me.
And
He told me
Some-
to shut up, shut the F up, shut the F up.
but sometime after he struck you, he stopped the car and let you off on Lisbon Street?
I asked him to drop me off at the Urban and the gas station so I could buy a pack of smokes. Because I didn't want him to go back to my place because it's on an old farm and it's nobody, if something did happen, there would be nobody to help. So I figured to just drop me off at the gas station, walking back, and that's on Lisbon Street, 196, would be best because I don't live very far from there.
So how did you get home?
I walked.
So as best as you can tell, were you in Auburn when he hit you or?
It was between Bowdoin and coming back. Coming back from it was all back roads, so it's hard to tell you exactly what town because I'm not from Maine.
Right.
So
So after he left you off, did it occur to you to report this to law enforcement as a criminal act?
I didn't want to see my buddy in trouble. I wanted to get him help. And I explained that to the first sergeant and Captain Reamer, to them both. And then knowing that they're both police officers, one an Ellsworth police officer, and Captain Reamer being a Nashua police officer, that they would know what the correct how to handle a situation like that because I did not. I tried to reason with them and it wasn't working. So I don't know if that
After,
answered.
either before or after Robert Card left the hospital in New York, did you discuss with Captain Reamer that you would help secure his firearms?
No, because I wouldn't. Even told his father I could not do that because of my legal situations. But I would talk to his father and, and hopefully his father went there with Kobe to remove the weapons is probably the only thing I would tell Captain Reamer.
All right, so I think I understand your answer is that you had a legal restriction, a bail condition that prohibited you from having firearms, is that right?
And I'm on pretrial, so I have that contract as well.
Okay. And
So
so you knew,
yes.
you knew you could not physically control his firearms yourself.
That is correct.
Did you tell Captain Reamer, though, you would help pass on messages to the Card family so that they could secure the firearms? Is that what you agreed to do?
Yes. Sorry.
Did Captain Reamer know about your legal restrictions?
Yes, the summer of 2022, I had to report myself because we go on to hand grenade ranges that summer and I'm usually at what they call a pit NCO. And knowing where my restrictions on weapon systems or any kind of weapon, I had to report myself to my first sergeant, and I was actually sent home at 18 in 2022.
And so did you only attend battle assemblies after that if there was going to be no weapons involved?
If there was no range or weapons, I would attend home station, which would be in Saco. I wasn't allowed, I'm still not allowed to go to any ranges. So, so in October, they go to a range. So,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
You mentioned him getting a hearing aid that he pretty much got online through an app or whatever it is. Were you surprised he got the hearing aid?
No, he's been talking about it for quite some time.
Like how long?
He was
roughly?
a while. It's
Okay.
been like a couple of years.
Okay.
He's been wanting to get something like that. I believe he was waiting. I don't remember exactly when it was passed where you can get over the counter
Mhm.
hearing aids, but he was literally waiting for that. So I don't know the
Okay.
exact date they allowed it, but he was saving his money to get them.
So was he having noticeable deficits in his hearing prior to him getting his hearing aid? Like you had to scream louder at him and he has to repeat things. Was he doing anything like that?
We'd have a conversation of what? And then he pushed me to his right side so he could actually hear me.
Okay, all right.
So that's probably the other reason why he liked to drive, because if he was sitting on my passenger side,
Okay.
he wouldn't hear me.
Okay, and I have two questions. One is the gun issue where you mentioned that you did speak to the father who said, yes, I'll take the guns. That's all you got. Was there confirmation that he actually did that?
No, I trusted that they were gonna, because it's not abnormal for his weapons to be stored at his father's.
Mhm.
So once he said, okay, that's, I mean,
And did you know how much weapons he had?
not exactly, because I knew he had some at his father's.
Okay.
I didn't know the exact number that he had at his home.
So you were quite surprised when you saw the weapons in the room when you were moving out?
Just one weapon. There was
Just one.
the
But that
chain-
was still, you were still, sounds like concerned because for one, your legal status, you don't want to be anywhere close to it. And
Right.
two, obviously
He-
it wasn't all removed.
He explained to me later, and I helped him get a gun safe. And he said he talked to his brother, and we put the gun safe in his garage, which I don't know the code to.
In
And
Robert's,
that was just to secure his weapons.
Okay.
This was after the fact, after I found it, even though I thought up until then, the weapons weren't in his possession.
okay. And one last question is, you had mentioned all these to your command structure. Were you satisfied with the response you were getting in terms of how to help Robert?
So there's a fine line of what I'm allowed to know. As far as medical history and stuff. Being his friend, I wouldn't, and not in his chain of command, I wouldn't be preview to that, his medical. So they're not just gonna outright give me that information. I would only get that from Card if he was talking to me. So they're not gonna tell me. It's out of my hands at that point.
Did you ever consider going outside, go to civilian side, like a mental health crisis resources or?
I believe at one point I called 988. I just don't remember the exact date. That's a crisis line for anyone that needs.
And would you, I mean, again, rough estimate, would you think that's probably like September or August when you did
It
that?
was after I got punched in the face.
After what?
It was after I got punched in the face. I just don't remember the exact day.
Okay, and do you remember the response you got?
They said they were gonna call him. I gave him his information, the counselors and stuff, and that's all I heard.
So what they told you was that they'll reach out to Mr. Card and address anything from there.
That's correct.
Okay, and then you never got follow-up, nothing.
I don't believe they would have called me and gave me any information.
But they didn't tell you that, hey, just want to let you know, I'll let you know what happened. Yeah,
No, they didn't,
Okay.
never said that. They just
All right.
asked for his information and told me that they were gonna contact him.
okay.
See
All right,
what they
thank
can do.
One real quick question. When you thought or came to know that it was Robert Card who committed the mass shooting on the 25th, did you contact anyone in your chain of command?
Yes.
Who did you contact?
First Sergeant Mo.
And what was First Sergeant Moat's reaction?
It just happened. Even though I knew it in my heart, it was him. I was mad. I was punching the side of my door, hoping it wasn't him, but knowing his car wasn't there. I also called my work. I was so concerned. I told my supervisor, I'm like, send everybody home and get out of there. she didn't listen, but, I was that concerned, because I asked him if Robert Card was there, is his car there? I was afraid that he might go there as well.
Did Sergeant Moat believe you?
He told me to let things play out. We don't know for sure it was him. I don't see that, because knowing Card for what he was, not the monster that he became, I don't know that person. His train of thought is like the Card that we knew, that we lost prior to making those shootings. And he's like, let it play out. You don't know that for a fact. I was like, yes, I do. I don't believe in coincidences. He's like, I understand, but and then Reed at some point contacted me. I was talking to him while driving a tractor trailer down the road. I pulled over in Kittery so I could check my messages and saw the photo. And I knew it was him. Those are my work pants. Those are the same boots we bought at West Point. That's the hoodie he usually wore. And that's the weapon. I believe it was his with a red dot on it.
And once the photo was released, did you have any further contact with your chain of command after that?
I was just inundated with phone calls from the police.
Police, yes,
I called Lewiston PD as well at some point after I saw the picture, and I reported it and told them who I was and gave my number. So yeah, it was a pretty horrific ride. I don't know how I drove from West Bridgewater all the way to West Bridgewater and back. There were several times I had to pull over,
Okay,
and then they wouldn't let me back, so it took me forever to even. First, they didn't want me in Maine, so I had to pull over. And then, go into Maine, then pull over. And 4.5 hours later, we're gonna put you in a hotel, park here. And then it sucked. That day was horrific.
okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. In terms of the conversations you had with him on the way back from Four Winds, did he tell you that he thought he had restrictions on his ability to possess firearms?
Yeah, he held a piece of paper saying that they restricted him for 10 years.
Okay,
And my response to that was, because he was upset about the silencer he just purchased, and all he had to do was go there and pick it up. Because he got the federal stamp and did it all legally. I was like, well, since you're in an institution, technically it's gonna ask you. I was like, I would suggest getting a lawyer and present that piece of paper to the lawyer and get legal advice. And I was like, at the very least, if you don't do that, check that off that you were in an institution, because if you lie on that form, you're in a lot. I knew he'd be in a lot of trouble.
and did you look at that piece of paper?
I physically did not read that paper. I took him. Robert Card never lies to me, so he never has. So I believed him. I didn't sit there and physically read it.
Did you think it was a New York court order that he was showing you?
I believe it's part of when somebody gets put in an institution and they're concerned for an individual, they'll actually give him that restriction for 10 years until he gets help. I'm not sure about their process, but in a nutshell, that's what I knew.
And you mentioned a gun safe. When did he get a gun safe?
Toward the end of August, beginning of September, we went to Dick's Sporting Goods. They had a sale. It was the same exact one he bought for his father. And I helped him load it to the back of his vehicle with other workers at Dick's Sporting Goods in Auburn or Lewiston. I'm not sure because that line.
And
So.
did you help him take it home?
Yes, I helped him offload it into his garage.
Okay, and did he show you what guns he was gonna store in that safe?
No, because he knew I wasn't allowed to have access to him, but I knew what the safe was there for. And he told me he talked to his brother, and this is how, that they agreed to lock up his weapons in this safe. And it was
So-
outside the house because he knew I was gonna be moving back in with him as well. So.
So you knew as of then that he still had the guns?
As of then, I suspected, but I figured they were still at his father's because it was when he got that bed. It was at the beginning of September is when I realized he really did have his guns, because when we installed that safe, I knew perhaps maybe his family members would come over and maybe drop some off because it's right around hunting season, and I knew we went deer hunting. So, yeah, I obviously knew he was going to put guns in there sooner or later, but I did figure out that he still had them in his possession.
Did you ever tell the commander, your commanders, that you had confirmed that the guns had been removed?
Not right away, because he was working with his family to lock up his weapons in that safe,
Okay.
so.
And did they ever ask you whether you had confirmed that those guns had been removed?
Not that I can recall, I don't know.
While he was at Four Winds, or during the time he was at Four Winds, did he ever tell you about the conversations he had with the doctors about his possession of firearms?
Yes, and they told him, he got mad because he's like, you're abusing my rights, this, that, and the other thing, but yeah, he had quite a few conversations with them about it. Oh, why do you have guns? He's like, I'm a farm boy, I go hunting, and I was like, I can have them legally in Maine, so he told me all that.
And did he tell you about his conversations with his doctors about whether he posed a risk to himself or others?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay,
I'm not, I don't remember, I should say.
okay. And did did Robert Card tell you, or when did Robert Card tell you that his son had spoken to the SRO? Was it before or after
SRO.
the school resource officer at his
It
high
was,
school?
but prior to that, I don't remember the exact date, but he was pretty upset about it.
Was it before he
was-
went to New York?
Yes, it was. It would have been that early spring prior to his sister calling me.
But he didn't tell you how he learned that.
I believe the school called him, but he wouldn't, I don't remember what he exactly said. It's been that long, so.
Okay.
But I was aware that he was pretty upset that they told the school that.
Thank you.
Based on what you had heard from Mr. Card and what you knew, you know that you learned, or I believe you came to the conclusion that Smenges and Just in Time and Maine Recycling were three spots where he had, at least in his mind, been challenged by people calling him a pedophile and saying
Behind
that-
his back, he wished people would just come to his face and tell him right to his face. He went up to people and challenged them.
Yeah.
I believe he was written up because he challenged what we call a customer at one of the redemption
So
centers.
At some sites you knew what had happened. At other sites, he told you he had difficulties there with people saying things about.
Yeah, even at the redemption centers outside of Maine Recycle.
So in your mind, the three sites, the two where there were shootings and Maine Recycling where he was found,
Yes,
were logical targets for his concern.
yeah, the FBI was surprised to learn that there was a second parking lot.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised they didn't know about, because when you bring back a full trailer, it goes into that secondary parking lot. You pick up, the only trailers that are up by the warehouse are what we call lift gates. That's the only trailers that are parked up there, but at the beginning of the day, if you don't have a lift gate, you pick up a trailer in that secondary yard,
So
so.
is it fair to say that in your mind, these sites were not randomly selected by him?
There were several sites that but I was thinking more locally. I believe I gave a list of like every place that he's complained
Yeah.
as much as I could think of.
But these three were specifically in your mind.
Well, after I heard where it was, where the shootings were taking place, I knew that he was mad at both places, and I knew he was mad at Maine Recycle, but I may have said other places too. I'm just not sure, there's a lot of, yeah.
Anybody, you have any questions, Ann?
Sergeant Hodgson, when you figured out that it was Mr. Card who was involved in the shooting that evening, and you told us you had a lot of people interviewing you, state police, FBI, and others. Did you have a conversation with any of them about what we're calling the overflow lot, or that second lot, and your concerns about that?
To be honest with you specifically, I don't remember. I know I said it a few times, and then, yeah, I don't remember specifically who I talked to. I'm sorry. There was so many people calling me.
But
I do remember saying it. I just don't remember how many times or. Because I was getting asked the same question over and over and over again.
So you remember telling someone in law enforcement or multiple people in law enforcement about the Maine recycling? We call it you call it the second lot or the overflow lot, is that correct?
Yes,
And that was between the night of the shooting and the night that they found Mr. Card?
that's correct.
Okay. And did you tell your commanding officers about the gun safe?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Do you remember if you told law enforcement about the gun safe?
I don't remember. Sorry.
That's okay.
Jim, anything? Brian, do you have anything? I got it. I just, I want to get everybody in and then we will go back, okay? Yeah, I saw it.
So I think you said earlier that you had been to just-in-time bowling with Sergeant Card, is that right?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
You had been bowling at just-in-time with Robert Card.
Several times, yes.
And so while you were there bowling with him, did he make statements about people talking about him at that place?
Yes.
And so when you heard that was one of the scenes of the shooting, that made a very direct, logical connection to Robert Card being potentially involved.
That's correct, because he was angry at several people there.
And I think you said earlier that when you were there once bowling with him, he showed you that he had a firearm in his, somewhere in his person or in his,
Yeah, he had it concealed.
and
So
at the time you didn't know that that was illegal.
I wouldn't know that because he never carried a weapon in Maine, just in New Hampshire.
But he didn't use it. He didn't threaten anybody. He just had it.
No, he just had it because he was concerned that he might get beat up because he was being called a pedophile. He was there, pretty much it was perceived that he needed it for his protection because there were several people mad at him, is what he perceived.
Did you ever go with him to Shemenji's for cornhole?
Negative. I was working at a different company. It took a lot of my time. To the point I was aggravating Card because we didn't really go out and do anything.
But is,
So he was already stopped by the time I started working the same places that he did. Matching up our schedules. The only place he was going was just in time. He already stopped going to Smidgey's.
earlier though, had he told you that Shemenji's was one of the places people were talking about him?
He said it several times. I don't remember exactly when it started. I know he was, when I first moved up here, he was going to Smidgey's, and at some point he got so mad he wouldn't go back there.
All right.
I just don't remember the exact dates.
Thank you.
One last question. And just for clarity, outside of the shooting, prior to the shooting, you had no conversation with any law enforcement agencies outside of the officers in reserve?
Prior to the shooting?
Yeah, did you have any conversation, anybody, anyone trying to reach you? Or
Just my chain of command.
just chain of command? Okay.
That's correct.
No further questions? Thank you very much, Sergeant Hodgson.
Thank you.
Appreciate your attendance today. And we have nothing further for today. And we're done well within the time frame. So
I move to adjourn.
you moved in second to adjourn, and all in favor say aye. And we are adjourned.